This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a smackdown between two Android tablets. We have the Sony Xperia tablet S here, just came out a couple of days ago, and the also fairly new Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1. One starts at $399, one starts at $499, one has a nifty pen feature, the other one doesn't. We're going to compare them now. So here we have the Sony Xperia Tablet S, just came out a couple of days ago, and the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 just came out last month. Two hot Android tablets right now. A lot of similar features here, and the price not too far apart, so we're going to help you decide which one might be right for you. The Galaxy Note 10.1 uses the standard 10.1-inch 1280 by 800 resolution display. That's pretty much what you'll see on all Android tablets except for the Asus Transformer Pad Infinity TF700 and the Acer Iconia Tab A700, which have 1920 by 1200 displays. And the Sony has the same resolution, that's 1280 by 800, but it's a 9.4-inch display, so that allows for a little bit smaller footprint for the device, maybe a little bit nicer to hold, easier to hold, and also the pixel density is increased just a little bit because it's about a half an inch smaller diagonally. Both of these run Android OS 4.04 Ice Cream Sandwich. They have a gig of RAM, and they're available with 16 or 32 gigs of storage, and the Sony's also available with 64 gigs of storage if you want. Both have expansion slots. The Sony has a full-size SD card slot, and the Samsung goes with a more common micro SD card slot. If you want HDMI out or USB host capabilities, both of these require that you buy dongle adapters that run about $20 for the USB host and about $40 for HDMI, and they use a proprietary connector for that connection. The Sony starts at $399 for the 16 gig versus $499 for the Samsung. Why does the Samsung cost more? Because it has the Wacom digitizer and active digital pen. If there's some kind of more expensive fancy-dancy add-on feature, you'll see a difference in price. I.e., the full HD tablets cost about $100 more than their non-HD equivalents, and this guy here, because of the pen feature, costs $100 more. And we'll discuss the pen feature a bit. If you want to learn all about it, though, be sure to watch our video review of the Galaxy Note 10.1 and read our written review as well. Sony doesn't have any fancy features like that, hence the $399 price point, which is the same as the Asus Transformer TF300. That's the 1280 by 800 version of Asus's Android tablet. But it does have a lot of good custom software, and that's something that I've liked about the original Sony tablet and this one. Plus, we have a very nice design here. The original Sony tablet S, as I mentioned in our full video review of this tablet, was kind of thick at the top. They did the magazine wedge look on it, and that top wedge was fairly thick. Now, a year later, component miniaturization marches forward, and so they can make things thinner. Plus, I think they just figured out, well, we can make it thinner by not making that magazine flap so big. So from the front, it's a nice, attractive looking tablet. Almost looks a little bit more 4x3-ish like the iPad, though it isn't, because of the more compact dimensions. But take a look at the back here, and you can see we have that folded, stippled black magazine fold thing. And that actually makes it nicer to hold, easier to hold. You get grip points on the side, you get something to hold onto the back so it doesn't slide away. And you get this nice big expansive aluminum, which makes it look a little bit more like a high-quality piece. The first tablet S, the black fold came pretty far down, about down here, so it pretty much looked like shiny black plastic. Not as enticing, perhaps, especially for Sony, who usually does make kind of classy-looking products. Galaxy Note, on the other hand, this guy is available in either dark gray or in white. I personally prefer the white. It's really just a matter of your taste. I think it looks kind of clean and modern looking. A more pedestrian design overall. It looks like your usual rectangular kind of tablet. Got the metal around the edges, and we have the usual glossy Samsung shiny back. Now if you get the gray one, it's kind of a faux brushed dark gunmetal look. So yeah, it does look more plasticky than the Sony, though the Sony has a decent amount of plastic thanks to that wraparound fold. As to which you like better, I leave that up to you, but that's what the difference is. If you're one of those people who just really detests any plastic on your tablet, it's the Asus Transformer TF700 for you, the Infinity, or the iPad if you're into iPads and iOS as well, or the Toshiba Excite 10, which has an aluminum back. In terms of display quality, both of these are better than average among Android tablets. I'm not talking full HD kind of quality here, but in terms of color saturation, brightness, and contrast, these are both very nice displays. I do give the edge to the Sony, thanks to the pixel density being increased by the smaller diagonal size, and just the true black technology that Sony uses is really nice looking display, very sharp, very rich in colors, and it has a certain natural warmth to it. Sony knows a lot about making TVs, well, so does Samsung, but well, Sony does make really nice screens on their TVs. If you're watching movies, flesh tones are just really very warm and natural looking. I'm not saying that the Samsung has a bad display by any means, but just empirically speaking, a little bit more sharper, a little bit more vibrance going for the Sony. When it comes to audio quality, Sony really improved things from the last gen tablet with this. They moved the speakers away from the side and they now fire it out the bottom. So when you hold it one hand on each side, you're not going to be blocking the speakers. And we can see the speaker grills are right here, fairly large, reasonably good sound. The last Sony tablet was kind of meek sounding. This one has pretty good audio. But Samsung, they've been the clever ones here. They had that bright idea of, look, why don't we just put the speakers right on top so that they're facing you? So clearly, nice, decent-sized speaker grills right here, and it's facing at you. You're going to get some good audio. And the Galaxy Note 10.1 and the Tab 2 also has the same design. Some of the best audio I've ever heard on a tablet. Rich and full and obviously directed at you. Now we're going to test out the same tune, and you'll see that actually they both sound pretty good, but Samsung does get an edge. And we have an acoustic guitar piece here because you can really hear the quality of the speakers a little bit better when you're doing something stringed or instrumental. And both of these are set at about 3/4 volume. First the Samsung. You can see we'll bring the volume up a little bit more. So that's really very nice sounding. Often with tablet speakers, I just really don't enjoy listening to music on them because they're so tinny. And now we're going to try the same thing on the Sony. A little thinner, a little tinnier sounding, but pretty good volume. Let's bring our volume up a little bit higher. So certainly loud, not as full sounding, but not too bad either for a tablet. How about performance and horsepower? The Sony has the NVIDIA Tegra 3 CPU that is a quad-core CPU, 1.4 gigahertz, pretty much the de facto standard for your higher-end Android tablet and even overseas for smartphones. We don't tend to see that CPU used in smartphones here for wireless radio reasons, but definitely a good performer. It scored about 4,500 on Quadrant, which isn't the top score we've ever seen for a Tegra 3. That would be around 5,000 or so, but it's still quite good. Now Samsung, they really win here. You've got the quad-core Exynos CPU that Samsung makes here with Mali 400 graphics. Wickedly fast, highest scoring device so far among Android devices that we've tested. Easily scores about 900 points higher on Quadrant than the Sony does. Yow. Now, also, it scores incredibly high on the SunSpider JavaScript rendering test, so that's also something important to keep in mind too. The Sony is pretty much average, is around 1900 versus around 1200 for the Samsung. But one important thing to keep in mind here, these are both overkill, okay? These tablets are smarter than you, they're smarter than me. They can do a heck of a lot of calculations per millisecond. Do you really need all that CPU power? Most of the time, no, you really don't. Even today's demanding 3D games, most of the time, you can still play those even on a Tegra 2, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't get too obsessed about that, but if you're really forward-looking, if you're a spec geek, then certainly the Samsung is going to float your boat there. And while the Samsung can play Tegra's own games, because most of those are actually ported to run on all sorts of ARM-compatible CPUs, you don't get the Tegra 3 optimized versions that get you a little bit extra sharpness in some games, some more visual effects, particularly water splashing on the screen. Whereas you will get that with the Sony, with the Tegra 3, because, well, it's Tegra 3, it's Tegra 3 optimized compatible. We should be seeing PlayStation games coming along for this because, well, Sony does make PlayStation certified products. Right now, there is no PlayStation app preloaded on here to shop for those. We're hoping that that will come along. When it comes to web browsing, both of these come with the Android default WebKit web browser, which is perfectly capable. And you can download Chrome, you can download Firefox, Dolphin, whatever you want. We're just going to do a little speed comparison here. We're on our own site, Mobile Tech Review, and we're going to load the same page on both. And this page is not on the cache of either of these devices, so we should have a fair test right there. Sony comes to the lead at first, but Samsung has finished rendering the entire page quite a bit sooner, as you can see. So, yeah, you're going to get faster web browser rendering on the Samsung, at least if you're using the built-in web browser. In terms of stability, I give the edge to the Samsung right now. One of the most stable Android tablets on the market. Certainly, I hate to say it beats out the ASUS Transformer line of tablets, but they are not the kings of stability. They're good at many things, not that. The Sony has been very good, but there's one thing that I've noticed, and this may be fixed with firmware. This happened with the last gen Sony tablet too. There were a couple of quirks, and they updated the firmware and fixed those. But if the tablet's been asleep for a while, and I don't mean days, I mean hours, it turns the Wi-Fi off, which was kind of like an old-fashioned honeycomb OS 3.2 way of handling power management. And when it does that, applications that depend on doing background updates when the tablet is sleeping can get kind of bent out of shape, particularly Sony's own social networking application, which crashes routinely. It doesn't bring the whole tablet down, you're not messed up there, but you'll just see a little dialogue that says social life crashed. And then you hit OK, and then it relaunches itself. And the same thing will happen, rinse and repeat, every time Wi-Fi shuts off. And there is no setting actually on the Sony to change that Wi-Fi off when sleeping behavior. So there's that. My only complaint right now with the Sony in terms of stability. When it comes to battery life, the Samsung is just an Energizer bunny. Runs. It goes easily 10 hours on a charge with mixed use. You know, if you're going to just sit there and stream movies, it's going to take up more power than if you're doing a mix of web browsing, maybe working on some documents, reading your email, watching a couple of locally stored videos, and some streaming video. But on average, I'm seeing 10 hours. Sony's a little bit smaller. There is less room for a battery here, and right now I'm seeing more like 8.5. We're still doing tests on the Sony, but it looks like it's going to shake down that way. Now when it comes to camera, we're in the camera application for each of these guys, not looking at anything too terribly exciting. We'll move Diablo down here so we have a little something to look at, upside down, right side up, sideways. You can see you get a bigger viewfinder presentation here because Sony has a neat little film strip by default down here, and both the interfaces are fairly intuitive. We'll switch to photograph mode right there, so they're both in the same mode. And you've got your control strip right here, and that's customizable on the Samsung, and they both have a good amount of features. Now, other than the difference in presentation of the viewfinder, what's important here is that the Sony is 8 megapixel and the Samsung is 5 megapixel. And megapixels aren't always the most meaningful thing because you can have a pretty crappy high megapixel camera and a really good lower megapixel camera. Samsung makes competent cameras. That's a competent camera. It's not a stunning camera. Sony has been doing amazing things in Sony Ericsson with imaging in mobile devices for quite some time. This is an excellent camera in the Sony Xperia tablet. Shoots 1080p video versus 720p on the Samsung. Beyond that, really sharp photos that are beautiful to look at, pleasing video that's not jerky, that's not blocky, anything like that. So other than, you know, I'm not going to make jokes about walking around taking pictures with your tablet and how goofy that might look, because let's face it, we all use whatever is handy when we need to take a picture or shoot a video, and I would choose the Sony any day for that. When it comes to being able to play video, including 1080p video, they're both very competent, more than enough power to handle that. And again, both of them will require an HDMI out if you want to watch 1080p video on a monitor or HD TV. Now, the next thing that's up is the pen. You can use a capacitive stylus with the Sony, just like any other non-active digitizer Android tablet, which means pretty much all Android tablets. There's only a handful that have an active digitizer. And also the iPad too. You get a capacitive stylus if you want to buy one, and you can do stuff, but it's not nearly as precise and responsive as an active digitizer. 1024 levels of pressure sensitivity with the pen that's included with the Samsung. So to highlight the difference, now first off, let me just say, for those of you who are graphic artists who want to paint, draw, and sketch, and those of you who are avid note takers, be it for school or anything else, really the Galaxy Note 10.1 is your tablet, hands down. It's made for that kind of thing, so you don't have to watch this section of the video. For those of you who are on the fence, you're not so sure how much you might use the tablet with the pen features and you want to see what you can do, we're going to take a look at an application called Lecture Notes, which is pretty popular, particularly among students, and see what the difference in note-taking is like. So here we are in Lecture Notes, and we've created a couple of notebooks on both of these tablets, and we have a lined and unlined notebook, ruled and unruled, and we're going to take some notes right here now. So I'm just going to write something. And it's a decent enough experience, but you can see how I'm pressing fairly hard and it's going to miss, and it's going to skip a little bit once in a while. That just happens with capacitive stylus. And now I'm pressing fairly hard to compensate, and it gets the job done. It's okay. It's not so beautiful to look at, but it's adequate. Now we're going to look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1. So here first we pull out the pen, and there's a built-in holder here, and it has a little sensor, so it actually knows when I've taken the pen out, and I can launch all these Penaware applications, but in this case we want to use the same application on both, so we're going to stick with the Notes application here. And I have not turned on lines for this one, but that just does not really matter. And this is just very smooth. It's never going to skip a beat and miss anything that I'm writing. And where it becomes even more important, again, is for you graphic artist types. This supports pressure sensitivity, so fat line, thin line. And if we take a look at Samsung's custom applications right here, and we will just launch S Note. And start a new note. And here we are with palm rejection. That means if I'm laying my hand on the screen while I'm writing, something that you won't get with a capacitive stylus, it doesn't even matter. It's still just going to take my input. So smoother lines. Pressure sensitivity, I can draw heavy, I can draw light. Just very smooth in general. And again, I can rest my hand on here. And the Galaxy Note also supports handwriting recognition inside of S Note, and it does formula recognition too. And you can actually switch your input keyboards. Say we're just going to be typing something here, and you're just not really thrilled with typing that on-screen keyboard. Now we can press and hold right here and switch over to handwriting input. And just give us a little tip here. Samsung loves to show their tips. So we can actually use this right here, and it works pretty well, pretty accurately. And while we're rolling into the whole software feature set, we have the side-by-side application feature. For those of you who haven't watched our review of that, we'll go back to S Note right now and say we want to bring in the web browser too. More tips, go away. And so now we can take notes while we're looking at the review of this product over here. And there are other options too. You can switch and have a video playing. You can have a video just flowing around anywhere in the screen playing. And a couple of applications, 6 in total, that you can actually use side by side. You can have your email listing open in one window, for example. So some nice multitasking going on. And that's not the end of the multitasking. If we go back home, you can see there's a little up arrow here. And we have several little applets here for S Planner, which is the customized calendar on Android. The music player, your email window, calculator, alarms, task managers. So say we're just going to bring that up. Here's our little floating calendar right here. And we need the calculator because we're trying to figure something out. And we got the calculator over here. So that's what Samsung has done beyond the usual touch whizification of the UI. Now, while with the Sony, you're not going to get the side-by-side kind of application support that you do for the 6 applications that are built into the Galaxy Note, but you do get a little bit of that little mini widget thing going on here where you can have a little window open up. Say you want your clipboard over here, there's a little memo. You can have one of these open at a time. So here's your memo. You can say, write something there, draw a sketch, whatever it is that you want to do. Call up the web browser just in a little window right here. So this can be handy for some form of multitasking. We're not nearly as advanced as the Samsung on this, but it's not too bad. Certainly more interesting than what a lot of other Android tablets offer. And lastly, we're going to talk about the AV remote control. Both of these products have an IR Blaster and AV home theater remote control software, and they take two very different looks at the same thing. Now, Samsung goes with Peel, and Sony goes with their own remote, which is my favorite remote, bar none. You got the little version right here. You can swipe through everybody that you've created, the cable box, the AV receiver just for quick on-off. And if we want to get to the full application, I'll show you what it looks like. Starts you out in this view, and this is all the AV gear that we've set up for a particular room. And when you see these remotes, boy, if you're a remote geek, you're just going to die. Check that out. And you've got several screens of buttons here. So unlike most abbreviated remotes that you see on Android tablets or even some of the software remotes that you see on iOS, if you buy, say, a separate AV blaster that you can stick into the port on your iPhone or iPad, this is, wow, this is just everything that you could possibly want to do. Notably absent, however, is your TV content. Sure, you can use TV Guide or something like that, but there's no integration with the remote. So that's why Sony has a downloadable application, and when you use it, they actually tell you should go ahead and download this. It's free, and that's called Watch Now. So Watch Now is very content-centric, and it integrates with the remote control. So this is going to start marching along and show me as a timeline what's on now, what it thinks is most exciting, anything that I've favorited. So we're interested in that. And if I hit watch now, it's going to integrate with remotes, it's going to put it on and I can favorite it. But that is a separate download. I really can't figure out why it is that Sony didn't just put this on the tablet to start with. It belongs on the tablet. Now on the Samsung we have the Peel Smart Remote that they preload for you. And it's going to load our programming, and you'll see that this is very content-centric, quite a different approach from the Sony product. And it's going to load in everything that's playing now in the same kind of featured content grid right here. And if you want to get to your gear, you have the all on, all off button right here for controlling of that. You can choose your rooms. Say watching TV, I just turn that on, it's going to turn the TV on. And over here we have the swipeable, very abbreviated remote to control the TV. So not nearly as impressive as Sony in terms of, again, if you're that AV remote geek and you really want all those buttons, and God knows today's complex TVs and AV receivers particularly, you need a lot of those buttons. It impresses me. Now one more point, in terms of file management, I'm mentioning this particularly because when Sony first came out with the Tablet S running Honeycomb, they only allowed file transfer from USB flash drives and from your SD card. Now actually it handles storage much better. It integrates with your gallery, with the music player, all that kind of thing, just like the Samsung does. And with both of these you're going to have to buy that USB host cable if you want to use flash drives or hard drives. And both of these support the ext file system, and FAT32. They do not support NTFS file systems for those of you who have large external hard drives. So on each of these, storage integration is very similar, and you've also got support if you get that USB host adapter for HID input devices like game controllers, keyboards, not just using flash drives or small portable hard drives. So that's the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 versus the Sony Xperia Tablet S, starting at $499 for the Samsung, starting at $399 for the Sony. And you know, they're both very nice tablets. I really wouldn't mind owning either one. Clearly, if the pen is meaningful to you, if you want to take notes, if you want to annotate documents, if you're a graphic artist and you like to draw, well, it's the Galaxy Note for you. If none of those things are important to you, well, then the Sony can start to make a lot of sense. I really like the slightly more portable form factor. It's quite ergonomic. It feels a bit more natural when you're holding it for reading. That magazine, book cover design kind of thing really works. Makes for a pleasant experience. I like the screen a little bit better on the Sony too, and as you know, I like that AV remote because it's got all the darn buttons in the world on there. Really makes controlling your AV gear easy. Samsung fights back with very fast performance. Right now it is the fastest Android tablet on the block, and it gets the edge for the speakers too. They're a little more full and rich, though the speakers on the Sony are by no means poor as tablets go. They're pretty good, but just a little thinner, a little tinnier sounding. Both of them have very good quality audio out through the headphones. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to watch our video review of each of these tablets, read our written reviews, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.